It's Saturday. Welcome to Money in the Law. You're here on Money in the Law with John Drohan, Jay Marsden, Christian from the Holliston Cable Access TV on My FM 101.3. You know what that is? That's the soft intro.
The soft intro?
Yeah.
I like that.
Jay?
That means you're probably out late last night? Is that what that means?
No. Not go out late. I'm too old to go out late. We covered that last time. How are you?
Doing well, thank you. Doing well, especially after the big game last week.
Oh, right.
Everybody's flying high. Just when you think they don't have any more tricks in the bag.
You know what? It's
out
funny.
Comes one.
If we are going to do sports talk, which I'm happy to do, I never thought for a second that New England was going to lose that game. I just had it was just
really?
too. Yeah, I didn't feel good about it. I felt like they were too calm. Right. Even when Gronkowski went out, I felt like they were too calm, and it was a matter of time.
So my wife brought up what I believe is an excellent point in this day and age of focusing on the impact that concussions have. Let's say, for example, in the NFL, without getting into that discussion, which is like a 10-show discussion.
Which now we are.
But my wife said to me, she goes, "I got a question for you." She goes, "Why does the guy who lays the helmet hit on Gronkowski, why does he get to stay in the game?" Which I thought to myself, you know what? That's a classic example. If you're going to throw the flag for something like that, you're going to stick the penalty on him. Where's by the way, have a great day. Because she goes, so now the Pats are without him. So now they're clearly handicapped.
Well, yeah. So there's a rule. There's a rule where if it's an egregious, like they'll kick him out of the game.
Yeah. And I guess my thought was maybe there should be a little bit more use of that to kind of send that message. But
yeah,
I guess not.
Right, because that makes a difference. It makes if he's a key contributor and he's guy, because it's almost like in hockey when you have like your goons, right? So you have your fourth line and their job is to go and pound on all the good guys.
Yep.
And you'll get in Eddie Shore will sneak in and start pounding on
full-time hockey. Yeah. So that's the issue. The issue, and that was which I thought was a great point. Again, on its own, wouldn't have given it much thought. Where there's been so much attention brought to this idea of concussions and the play.
Well, with any kind of cheap shot where you're going to take somebody. I mean, they've done it before. They've thrown guys out of the game. Yeah. And that guy, and then there's the kind of the post-game fine, because I think the way they do it now is guys will get fined.
Yeah, the NFL goes back and says,
and they'll review it and they'll fine. That guy should get fined.
And they go, you know what? I know you're making $62 million this year. Here's a $10,000 fine.
Nah, it's a little more than that. And that guy, he's not making $62 million. This is the NFL. This ain't baseball. No. This is
a little more parity.
NFL. They earn their $1 million a year.
Yeah. And if they don't, hey, by the way, that gym bag in front of your locker, that's yours. We're all done here. We're moving on. Yep, we're moving on.
It's a different animal.
Oh.
All right, so what are we talking about today?
Other
than sports.
I believe that there's some interest in talking about taxes now that
the 2018 tax reform that has gone through.
That's right. I'm not sure I'd call it reform, but that's okay. The new tax code.
Well, there's new taxes.
Oh, it's new, all right.
They've changed, and there's a couple of nuances that are happening. Now. I'm losing my. No. I know what I'm doing.
You put a blazer on, the whole thing falls apart.
That's
For
right.
those of you at home who aren't benefiting from the beauty of the HCAT transmission right now, John's actually dressed up today.
I'm dressed up in my Don Johnson outfit.
Yeah, because he knew it was radio. He said, he dresses up for the radio.
That's right. My Miami Vice. So I think today would be a great time because now we're at the kind of the end of January, so everybody's getting the W-2s, everybody's starting to get in that tax mindset, right?
Oh yeah.
You're if you have an accountant, Al Adavasio, I'm not going to mention any names, Al Adavasio.
That's what I would have mentioned.
Oh, that's what is that my guy? That's your my dear friend our dear friend Al Adavasio. He's, if you try and call him or get him on the phone, forget it. You can't get a hold of those guys. So this is a good time to kind of talk about some of the changes. There's some relatively significant changes that have happened with respect to deductions. So I got it all right here in my complete tax guide changes for 2018.
Well, and I'll actually give a shout out to our tax professional brethren in the industry. And people always ask, all the time, they'll say to me, do you do your own taxes? Or do you guys do taxes as part of your offering, right? And I'll say,
And you say, sure, I'll do your taxes.
Sure, for $1,000 we'll do that, But I will say to people, no, I don't do my own taxes. Earlier on, when I went out on my own, and then as your tax situation gets a little more complicated as a small business owner, I always hesitate because I always think I can do everything. That was one of the things that I intelligently offloaded, right? I said, you know what? I can spend a lot of time doing a lot of things. This is probably not one of them that I should spend my time on. I should bring in the experts. And so people will ask me, oh, I do my own taxes all the time. I was thinking about getting a tax person. I don't know if it's worth it. This change makes it worth it.
Yeah.
Right? Because now the world is different.
This or any change, right?
Yeah.
Because, and oftentimes there's going to be changes. And then, and we're not talking about like kind of your complicated, estate tax returns or things like that. We're talking about just your standard income tax return.
Right. But I'm saying that, changes in a personal, like I'll tell people, changes in your personal, like death, marriage, kids, things like that. Those are good years if you were going to
haircut, shave.
If you were going to engage the services of a tax professional, those are good years to do it. This may also be when these, next year when you have to go through these tax issues and how they relate to 2018, these may be good things to think about and have a sense of what the, how it impacts you, because it's a lot, it's changed.
So one of the cool things, and I'm going to go on and even more and say one of the things that is important to think about. I agree with you. I agree with you in that having a tax professional, well, I normally do. Having a tax professional help you with your taxes and do your taxes, it's worth it. Now, could you pay too much for a tax professional? Yeah, I mean, like with any service, you have to make sure that you understand what you're paying for, right? So, and some people are going to be more expensive than others because they're going to do different things. Some may just do, or they may have different credentials. You may have a different situation from somebody else. So, when someone says, "Well, I only paid, $300 to get my taxes done," well, your taxes probably weren't the same as somebody else as another.
That's right. So, somebody who's got a small business, multiple property owner, things like that. Yep.
So that said, you're talking about an offshore office, like in the Cape and Islands, like some type of offshore.
Well, offshore would be the islands, not the Cape. The Cape itself.
Cape is an island.
Although technically an island.
Cape is an island.
That's right.
So, but what I was going to say is that if you there's one thing to like have a tax person do your taxes, but it's another thing to make sure at least you get a general understanding of kind of what your taxes are, and that's easy to do, particularly now in today's day and age. In this new interweb thing that they've invented, in that this computer system or computer mechanism that you have, you can easily get find a calculator, a tax calculator that can do an estimate of kind of what your taxes will be. Sure. And it's not a bad idea to at least have a general understanding of kind of what goes into it, and then you can have a really intelligent conversation with your tax professional, which is great, because if they're worth their weight in what they're doing, they're going to sit you down. They're going to say, okay, here, let's talk. They're going to fire a bunch of questions at you. They're going to give you a questionnaire. They may review said questionnaire with you and say, okay, what is this? Tell me exactly what this is, and they'll be able to kind of walk you through and allow you to save as much money as you can as built within the law of the tax code.
Well, yeah, and in many cases, if you'll be able to ask them, are there things that I should be doing that will help me reduce my taxes, right? And that's really where their value comes in, because then they can say to you, look, here's a couple of ways that you might want to think about it. And in many ways, they can sort of make a dollars to dollars analysis that says, if you make these changes, it's going to actually put some real money in your pocket, right? And next year, instead of paying X amount of dollars on the same amount of income, you might pay less, and here's how you do that. Or, as we've talked about on the show a million times, if you do this, it's going to allow you to redeploy those assets in other places, right? The biggest place you see that when it comes to taxes is retirement savings. And they'll tell you, look, if you're going to put this much money away, then this is what the tax impact is going to be for you. If you put this much money away, X plus, you put more money away, this is going to be what the impact is on your taxes. And the way the tax code is written, your tax burden may pick up a substantial portion of the additional savings that you're putting away. So you put away $5,000, $3,000 of that might be picked up by reduction in your taxes. So
Do you work for some tax? Because it sounds like you know what you're talking about.
Almost.
Yeah,
almost.
know.
To the untrained
just to the point of being dangerous.
That's right.
Yeah, you're
right.
Well, and not to shake too much salt on you. As a finance guy, right? You need to know that. You need to kind of know about. You need to have a general understanding of tax, a general understanding of taxation, how it works, because you as when you put on your financial planning hat, you can say, look, here's some ways that, look, not for nothing, if you like paying taxes, that's great. If you like, there's ways that we can help you in order to not pay as much in taxes, and maybe accomplish two things with one fell swoop of the pen where I can say, okay, if I put money into my retirement or more money, then I reduce my taxable income and things of that nature. One of the things that I also want to talk about is with respect to the tax, with respect to like the, kind of where the tax code, where the tax brackets are for 2017, 2018, that there's some subtle changes. The difference of what I can deduct, some deduction changes, and that's the big thing that people kind of get hung up on. Are what can I deduct? How can I save how can I pay less in taxes? And then, we always kind of tell people to back up and say, okay, look, at the end of the day, you got to pay taxes.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, first and foremost,
Thanks for the great point.
Well, I mean,
thanks for the shout out.
But people get caught up in this idea that I don't want to pay any taxes. Well, for the most part, all right, that's not going to happen. It's probably not going to happen, right? I mean,
unless you don't make any money.
Well, unless you don't make any money,
you're robbing Peter to pay Paul.
Yeah. But for the most part, you're right. I mean, government costs money, right? Stuff costs money, so yeah, there's going to be some bill coming your way. Now, that the tax person's agenda is to read the tax code and say, all right, as long as we're playing by the rules, how do we make that number as small as possible, right? Yeah. Let's do it, right? So. That's something to think about.
Which is okay. Like we're not talking about tax loopholes or anything like that. We're talking about like filing your return and paying your taxes within the letter of the tax code. And the tax code, I mean, tax code's not simple. It's not like it's not actually user friendly. I mean, Albert Einstein said, if there's one thing that ever confused him, it was the U.S. tax code. Like
understandably,
Albert Einstein didn't even do his own taxes. I mean, that's crazy. So did you ever do your own taxes?
Yeah. Does that make me smarter than Einstein?
That probably at that point in time, at that point in your career, you were a little smarter than
at 11:55 on 4:15 when I was sitting there in front of a screen ready to. This is good enough.
What is my rule? Yep. When can I mail this? So
that's right.
All right. So let's talk about some of the. Let's take a quick break, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about some of the some of the changes in the code. And hang on. It's gonna
get another cup of coffee.
It's gonna get exciting
because you're gonna need it.
We'll be right back on Money in the Law with My FM 101.3, Jay Marsden, John Drohan, Holliston Cable Access TV. With Christian and all his people, which I got to see yesterday. Yeah, got to see Lisa and Don, Bruce, all hanging out at the station yesterday.
The magic happened.
Yeah, it's like the band. I was telling about the band. We'll talk about it. We'll be right back.
All right. And you're back with Money in the Law, My FM 101.3, Jay Marsden, Marsden Law Group, John Drohan, Main Effort Financial, Christian, keeping us handsome and skinny at Holliston Cable Access.
Speak for yourself.
And you can hear us anytime live on WMSCMyDailyNews.com. Listen to some of the back shows, listen to this show, listen to all the future shows, and listen to them from anywhere you'd like to. You want to download this on vacation? Download away.
What a great vacation. Like, what a just background vacation sound. It makes you want to go on vacation because a lot of times with the stuff we talk about, just like it carries people to vacation.
Yeah, you want to gather your friends around the radio. You want to say, look, everybody, stop before you pick up that Bloody Mary. I got to do that. We got to put the show on. Now, enjoy your mimosa. To the smooth stylings of Jay Marsden and John Drohan.
Yep, talking about the tax code.
And Money in the Law and the tax code. And if we're going to listen to that tax code show, we're going to need more
champagne.
Marys.
Yeah,
more Bloody Marys.
That's right. Yeah, less juice.
Top off that pitcher.
Right,
yep, that's right. Good stuff. So tax code. So a little bit of work getting it there. But government in its infinite wisdom got it done.
Yeah,
they got it done according to the folks who were involved. Most substantial, biggest change to the tax code in the history of all mankind, I believe, including the change in 1066, right before the Battle of Hastings, where they discussed how they were going to change the tax code and then off to war. So a huge change.
Right.
Monster change.
It was and some sort of like Declaration of Independence level type of change, Constitution, Federalist Papers, and here we are, and we have it right in front of us.
I mean, it's funny, when I was in the downtown center and the gentleman rode in from Washington on horseback with the announcement of the new tax code, I knew we were making history.
Yeah,
I knew it.
And you happen to have a snare drum like hanging around your neck, and you just started playing it. And
well, there was a guy standing next to me, had a bandage on his head, and I didn't know what the bandage was for,
bleeding.
but he was playing, I believe, a flute or something like that. Right. So I mean, when the tax code came riding in, it was legendary. It was a huge moment for everybody that I was with.
And then I heard a lot of muskets getting fired in the air as well.
Oh my gosh, yeah, it was crazy. So I mean, let's talk about these.
All right. So what's going to change? All right. So here's one of the big changes. Here's one of the big changes that we're seeing right now.
Drum roll, please.
Okay. So what's one of a big deduction that people have? What's kind of one of your primary deduction? I'll give you a hint. If you own property, and if you don't fully own your property, what can you deduct?
I was going to say for my clients, medical, but that's not it.
No, that's not it.
Property taxes.
But your property, yep, I can deduct my property taxes. But what else can I deduct?
Oh, mortgage interest.
My mortgage interest, right? So if I don't fully own my property, but I have a mortgage on my property,
you share ownership at the bank.
There you go. That's right.
Yep.
I can deduct my interest that I pay on my mortgage.
Right now, whatever the interest is.
I can deduct it, right?
Yep.
And you know what? I still can in the 2018. I can do that. So on my primary mortgage, if I have a mortgage and let's say I pay $10,000 in interest, guess what? I get to deduct $10,000 in interest.
Fantastic.
If I pay $11,000 in interest, depending upon where my income lies, can I deduct 11? The answer is no.
No.
$10,000. That's where you can go.
They cap it.
Now, the other part of this is you're allowed to deduct the interest on a maximum on a loan, the maximum loan available. So if I have a loan for say $2 million, I can only deduct the interest of up to that loan of up to $750,000.
So that's the most that you can deduct. Correct. As mortgage interest.
Mortgage debt, right? So that when last year was $1 million and it's dropped down to $750,000.
So if I, for some reason, let's say I decide that this is my year, I'm going to have a great year, so I go out and I buy the Mac Daddy of all places down in Key West, Florida.
And I finance it for $1 million.
I finance it all the way through, 90% finance, 100% financing, right?
Yeah.
103% financing.
Why
back
not?
To the good old days, right? So in my mortgage interest for the year comes in at $751,000.
No. You can only be the debt can only be up to $750,000.
So I can only
you can only deduct interest on the debt up to $750,000.
And make sure I understand you. I want to make sure our listeners understand.
So if my mortgage is $750,000,
right,
all the interest that I pay on
the
$750, I can deduct.
Okay.
If my mortgage is $1 more than that, I can only pay up to $750, and I only can deduct up to $750,000 of the debt.
Okay, so you can't deduct $750,000.
No.
You can only deduct the interest
up to $750.
Okay, so
if your mortgage is more than that, so back to your Key West house where you financed that for $1.5 million,
right?
You only be able to deduct interest on half of that loan.
Okay. All right. No matter. So what if rates change?
What
if rates change?
If the mortgage rates change, it doesn't matter. I mean, it's whatever you pay on whatever your debt is, whatever the interest rate is, you're allowed to pay. You're allowed to deduct
whatever that number is on $750. No
Correct.
More than $750.
Correct. That's the maximum that you're allowed.
All right, so your rate's 3% on $750, you take that as deduction. Your rate's 5% on $750, that's your deduction.
Correct.
It's not $750,000.
So it's not 700. No. So if you buy a house for $750,000, just for everybody, let me slow this down a little bit.
I'm just trying to get.
So if you buy your $750,000 house, you can't deduct $750,000.
No, I'm not suggesting you can't. But what you're saying is I can deduct whatever the interest is on the $750.
Up to $750.
Right.
Up to the loan of $750. Right.
Well, prior to this, if I had a $2 million mortgage,
can only deduct up to $1 million.
Okay, all right. So they knocked it down.
They knocked it down.
So,
so the bottom line is this. So I'm using this point, which we dragged out a little bit longer than I wanted to.
You thought this would be an easy one? All right,
no. I'm getting to something more important.
I'm sure you are.
So
somewhere in there.
However, that's on your primary mortgage. What do many of your clients possibly have? Maybe if they did an addition, or they put in a pool, or they sent their kids to college.
The always popular HELOC.
Yes,
the home equity line of credit.
Which in the low interest environment used to be, and now, as you know, now that they've made this change, people are going to look back on that thing like, man. I remember that. Those are the good old days, right? So what Jay's talking about is the home equity line of credit, or like people call it a line of credit. So you say which is a loan, which is a credit loan against using your house as collateral.
The equity in your house.
Using the equity in your house as collateral, and you could get a line of credit from the bank. Very popular. Had an adjustable rate. Most of these have an adjustable rate, that like a variable rate. But now, in the old days, they'd be scary, right? They'd say, "Wow, you get a home equity line of credit. That rate is 6%, but it could jump up to 12." And the way these things are built is there'll be a cap. There'll usually be a cap on the when the banks are trying to sell them. They say, well, it'll be prime plus so it'll never go to like 30% or anything like that. But in the last 5-6 years, when we're in this low interest rate environment,
cheap,
and so you can get a home equity line of credit and prime plus 1, so maybe you're paying 3% and change, and you take out get a line of credit for $50,000. Guess what you were allowed to do before 2018? You
could deduct the line of credit interest.
You were allowed to deduct the interest that you paid on that line of credit.
Up to like $100,000, right?
Correct. Up to $100,000. So what a lot of people one of the things that we would do is we would say, look, so let's say a guy has $100,000 in the bank, and he says, I want to put in a pool. And we're like, awesome, that's great. And let's say he's got equity in his house. We'll take you for example. So you want to...
I started to pull my checkbook out to write a check off my $100,000.
Whoa,
stop, put your pen away.
Hold on a second.
That's right.
Now, we're not saying this is the right move for everybody, but this is one thing that you could do, and be able to deduct the interest on the loan, it may be cool. So I say, you guys, I got to write a $100,000 check, and then therefore I'm going to liquidate all. I'm going to spend all my cash.
Sure.
So I have no more cash, right? I have no more cash in case I want to go on vacation or an emergency or my car breaks or whatever.
And the answer was always, well, if I need more cash, I'll go get the home equity line of credit. I can always get the line of credit.
Right. So the line of credit, this line of credit, when you take this loan, any interest that you pay, just like with your mortgage, before the tax change, I could deduct that.
Yeah, you get 1099 for it.
That's right, and I could deduct that interest as just as if it was part of my mortgage, and it was a good deal. So so the guy who has $100,000 says I want to put in a pool, I'd say, whoa, hold on a second. Why don't you try this? Why don't you, because the interest rates are so low, why don't you borrow that money at 3%.
Right.
Borrow your $100,000 against your house, and guess what? That 3%, that the interest that you're paying on that, you get to deduct that from your taxes. So then that tax equivalent
so it's not really 3.
Brings it down. It brings it down even more. So now you're borrowing this money, and so yeah, you're still paying interest on that. You're still paying to borrow that money, but you're paying it at such a low rate. And what are you getting in return? You're getting the ability to keep that money in the bank.
Yeah.
I keep the flexibility. So if something happens, I can go back and get money in the bank. And if I wanted to invest said money and put some of that money at risk, I could do that and possibly get a return.
Kind of like an arbitrage play, right? Your $100,000 is going to earn more.
That's a good word.
Than you're going to get from borrowing this money. So
well,
borrow the money.
It could.
Yeah, that's right. There's risks. It could go the other way. That's right. Absolutely agreed. But I think the playoff is, earn 5 or 6. And even if you made a real conservative play, like, I'll put it in a bond fund or something like that. Earn money on your 100. Borrow the other money at 3, and then after the interest deduction.
But what was the saving grace of the whole thing was that, you know what? Let's say I did that and I took a home equity line of credit, and one day I wake up and I'm like, I hate having debt. I hate having an equity line of credit. You know what I can always do? I can always go back to the bank, turn around, write a check, and I can pay that thing off.
Yep.
And so that equity line of credit was, for a lot of people, it makes a huge difference in their life because it provides them cash flow, and it provides them cash flow in low interest rate at a low cost, and they have cash flow and they can do things with it. Maybe they're not putting in a pool, maybe they're not putting in addition, maybe they have college costs, maybe they even are in a situation where they lose their job, right? And so look, I've established this line of credit. And I can take money out of it, and I'm not going to frivolously spend it.
Right, yeah. Putting aside the use your house as an ATM approach, which is a different story, but this is the idea of, look, I've made an investment, I have some equity here, and if I need to use it for an emergency, I have it.
Yeah.
Or a pool, same thing.
Which could be
in July is an emergency.
It's an emergency in late July.
Yeah.
So, but now, I can no longer deduct that interest.
Not at all.
No.
Not one nickel of it.
No, I can't deduct that interest anymore, and that sucks. That's because now that really takes that carrot away from that home equity. Now, does that mean that home equity line of credits are bad? No. They for many situations they fit, but you don't get that kicker of being able to deduct that interest.
Well, and now there's a real cost right now. The idea, especially in a rising interest rate environment, to go out and get that money now. To your point, it's not going to be seen as free money. And it's not going to be seen as something that you would go to. You would really give pause and say, is this what I want to do? Do I want to go get this money and use this money?
So who does that hurt? I mean, the people it really hurts are the banks, because the banks, if provided that a person qualified for loans, we're not talking about like the old days when, if you could fog a mirror, you get equity line of credit. Do you have a house? Well, I have a mailbox. Okay. Yeah. So
is it attached to a house? Well, no, but it's the shape of a house. The mailbox is shaped like a house. Oh, here's $300,000.
So in the old days, you could get it much easier. But as long as you qualify for the loan, then people would use these line of credits for any number of things. And
here's one of the biggest things they use them for. They use them to pay for college.
Well, that's right.
All right, so if you had a couple of kids going to college or a couple of kids, and you say to yourself, well, we have $300,000 worth of equity in our house, so you know what? Yeah, we'll go to the well. This is exactly, we used our houses. Some people made a conscious decision to say, look, I'll pay down my house, and then when the need arises for me to pay some of this college money off, I'll go and get a home equity line.
That's right.
Now you'll think twice about that, or you'll say, well, I'll do it, but I don't get the deduction off it. And those, as you'll be shocked to imagine, those bills for college, they can be big, right? They usually aren't cheap, right?
Oh,
those college bills, right? That's usually like a decent sized ticket you got to write, right? That's my understanding.
Well, yeah, you'll get there. You'll get there, young grasshopper.
I'm already there.
You're not there. You haven't written it yet. You haven't written the check yet.
All right.
But you will.
I will.
But you. So Jay's right. The idea of having that, another means, because you know what that does for a lot of people, with the astronomical cost of college. There's, when they're faced with the college bill where they don't qualify for financial aid, and it's, our whole saying of if your kid gets into Princeton, they're going to go.
Yeah.
In many respects, if your kid got into Princeton, the only way you could do it is if you had equity in your house, because you don't have the other assets to do it.
Right.
You don't have the cash flow. You don't have the cash flow to spend $8,000-9,000 a month, to send your kid to college.
Well, people do this for an auto loan. People buy a car. They say, you know what? I'll just go.
I'll
take a home equity line. I already have a line of credit.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people will get them and not use them, and then they see a car, or they need a car, and they go, you know what? I'll just take it out of my line of credit, and I'll pay it back.
And one of the things, and I, that's a great point, because I would always caution people. I'm like, look, the idea of everybody wants to own their house, right? We've talked about this before. Like that's this milestone. So remember, when you take a line of credit, you don't own your house anymore.
No,
right?
You own less of your house.
Yeah, your house is less, and you're still not there. You haven't kind of reached that milestone of owning your property. So if you're going to start using your home, I would never tell people to hey, just use your home equity line of credit for anything. Because that's a nerve right there. It's
a bad habit to get into, first of all, and you want it to be. I mean, you've always said it, and you've always preached the idea of have a purpose, right? So you want this to be an intentional spend. That's what you want it to be. You want there to be a plan to use it, and you want there to be a plan to pay it back.
I'm writing that down. I'm writing down intentional spend. Christian, write down intentional spend. Write that down on the blackboard.
Write on a T-shirt.
Right
on a T-shirt.
Yep, right on the T-shirt.
My FM 101.3, intentional spend.
Is this an intentional spend?
That's right.
Then, yeah, right. And then you just follow the flow chart. Yep. No, don't do it.
That's right.
Don't do it.
Yep. No, put down the card. That's right.
We've seen, and one of the other examples that we've seen, since we're talking about equity line of credit and not taxes, is the idea of people, if they have debt, right? So let's say they've accumulated some credit card debt for whatever reason, and the whatever reason is important, because it's one thing if it's like, we went through hard times,
right?
We had to do some improvements. We had some medical issues, whatever.
Some emergency.
Right. We had reasons. We can show you why we have $20,000 in credit card debt. There's other people that'll say, I don't know. I don't know. Well, yeah, we did that Disney trip, and then we didn't pay, and then
a couple of trips to Lowe's, a couple of trips to Home Depot, some dinner, a couple of movies, and next thing you know, it's $25,000.
Right, and then they're like, well, yeah, I can get that line of credit, I can pay that debt off.
Right, I'm not going to pay 17%. I'm going to pay 4%,
and I can deduct it. Right.
Yep.
So it's almost like it was like a no-brainer. But on the other hand, if it was not an intentional spend, now granted, if they had that capability to do it from a practicality financial planning means, yeah, do I want to pay 16% or do I want to pay 4% and be able to deduct it? Yeah, I'd save much more money doing that. Right. But I run the risk, and I could go down that slippery slope of just using your house as an ATM machine. So, which again, that's
not advised.
That's bad business.
Not advised.
No,
not advised.
I would. Now, if you're going to use someone else's house as an ATM machine, like I'd be happy to use Jay's house as my ATM machine if we were able to set that up. I'm not sure how I can do that.
See, I would use your house not as an ATM machine. I would use yours as one of those vending machines, but one that only serves like beer or high quality,
like a tap.
Yeah, that's right.
High quality bourbon.
High quality liquids, high quality brown liquids. I would use your house for that type of machine.
That would work. I would use.
That's old school. I would use it for that. The ATM thing, I'm not as intrigued by.
Yeah, I could use your house as. I could also. Jake's happy to use his house as also a dog pound too. So if you have a dog that you want to, you're going on vacation, he's happy to set. Yep, we'll write.
Dog sitting. That's what we need. Yeah,
that's what you need. Well, now that you've moved into the office, you have that whole home office that's in the front.
That's right. That's just begging for 5 dogs. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, 5 Great Danes ideally.
Bring them down.
Yeah, a couple Irish Wolfhounds. Something small.
All right, so we'll do a little bit more tax talk. We're going to take another quick break here on My FM 101.3 with Jay Marsden from the Marsden Law Group, right there on Washington Street in Holliston.
847, in case you were curious.
It's all written in green. I was just there the other day.
Yes, you were.
Yeah, I was just there the other day. It was actually a nice, fun visit. I got to take a couple pictures, which we were going to be uploading on the website. And John Drohan, that's me, also on Washington Street. We'll be right back on Money in the Law.
And you're back, Money in the Law, My FM 101.3, Jay Marsden, Marsden Law Group, John Drohan, Manufacturer Financial, Christian from HCAT, and we're talking the new 2018 legendary, greater than anything else that's ever happened in history, changes to the tax code. And we were just wrapping up the idea of deductions being no longer deductible, or at least limited.
Deductions that are no longer deductible.
In your deductibility. And what's funny is that some certain things get baked into like the American psyche. And this was one of them. I always felt like, change is, I understand that change is, always out there, and it's, it can be. But this is one of those things where people just assumed, they took it as gospel, right?
Yep.
Not only did they take it as gospel, they took it as gospel when you were looking for a house.
Yep.
Like, even the brokers were throwing around tax advice. The broker's like, well, look, Jay, your tax, your monthly payment's going to be blah, 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 but you're going to get all that back
as the mortgage guy,
next year. Yeah. I mean, they would sell that like it was yesterday's,
Everybody's got 3 mortgages these days, Ray.
Yeah. Don't give it a second thought. It's not a big deal. It's the American way. It's the American way.
It's not jumbo.
Yep.
500,000 is not jumbo.
Yep. Democracy, conquer the West, and get 3 mortgages. That's right. Baseball and apple pie.
But you're right, and that's what they would do. They would provide you tax advice, and they'd say, "Hey, no, go ahead, load up. You know what? You're way better off financing this thing at 7.5%.
The deductibility of the interest makes this the deal of the century.
It pays for itself
because you're not really paying what you think you're paying.
Isn't it funny when you talk to clients, and I hear this all the time, and sometimes people get to the point where they're close to the end of their mortgage, and they're like, yeah, I only got $50,000 left, or
every payment, it's all principal.
Yeah, all I'm doing is I don't get any more deductions.
None.
And then they ask me. Then they go, do you think I should get a loan or maybe take a line of credit or something just so I can have the deduction? And I'll be like, no, no. You understand that when you borrow money, it costs you money. You pay money to that interest rate.
Free.
Yeah, you don't get. Although you and let's talk about how the tax deduction works, right? So if I deduct $10,000 from my taxes, all that means is that I'm paying taxes on $10,000 less. I got to pay that $10,000 in order to get that deduction.
Well, and the other thing is there's lots of folks who now have to sit down and you talk about sort of reconfiguring their planning because they made a lot of decisions based off of what the tax code allowed them to do at that time.
Yep.
For example, you use the example before the break, and we won't linger on it, but you use the example of people saying, I'm going to use my home equity line to do something, right? There's 1 million properties down in Florida, all purchased with the home equity line on a house in Massachusetts, right?
Yeah.
People went down and said, well, I own this place up here, and it's $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, and I paid it off for all the right reasons. And now I had this line of credit on it for $100,000 or $150,000 because I'm down in Florida and I like it and I'm thinking about buying a place. And there you go. They wrote a check. It's on the line of credit, thinking that, well, I got the deductibility factor.
It's no different. It's no different than financing and taking a loan out to buy that house down in Florida.
Yeah.
But it is different. That's right. And so the home equity line of credit was so clean. It was an easier process.
Yep,
it was an easier loan to apply for, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And a lot of those people now, believe it or not, probably wouldn't qualify for conventional underwriting, right? So they operated off of this idea that, to your point, the equity line was a much easier lift. Go to the bank. The underwriting was easier. It was just, I own property. I have this much loan to equity value. Great. Here's your checkbook. They give you a different colored checkbook. That was always the big thing, right? The regular checkbooks are blue. The green checkbooks, that's the
I
home
always
equity line
wanted
of credit,
different colored
right?
checkbook.
So you get that. So now you wrote the check thinking, this is great. I'll just write, nope, not anymore. Not anymore. So it's going to cost you money.
Okay, let me talk about one other important change in the tax code, and this is something that people don't. Again, if you have someone else do your taxes for you, a lot of times you're not really you don't really understand kind of the nuances of your. And
Sure.
I'm not saying that I'm by any means like a tax expert, but I try to understand at least like the fundamentals, the basics of okay, so and I will Cro-Magnon it down for everybody right now. Okay, so you make money. And then you are, depending upon how much money you make, you pay taxes on that money. Now, people think, well, they always kind of estimate. They say, well, I'm 30% of my taxes, or I'm in the 35% tax bracket, or I'm in.
Right.
Now, how that works, it's not that all of the money that you make is taxed at 35%. There's different phases. There's different
tiers.
break points. Right, that's right. Where up to a certain amount of money, you're taxed at this rate, and up to this next amount of money, you're taxed at this rate. So when it works out, it's not that all of your money is taxed necessarily at one particular rate. It'll average out into be something. Normally, most of the time, it'll average out to be something lower than whatever your highest tax bracket that you find yourself in. So,
but just make sure for folks who are trying to visualize it. So the easy way to think about it is when you see those tax rates or those tax brackets, if you made 0 to $24,000, that's what you pay in taxes on that money, right? And then you see the next. So then, to your point, then on your $24,001 to the next bracket, you're paying some percent. So there's a graduated number.
So for everybody on TV, I'm going to show it to you. There it is. Right? Don't zoom in. No. You don't have to zoom that in.
Say that.
He's zooming.
Stay seated. Stay seated. Don't get out of your chair.
Zoom that in.
Don't walk up to the.
For those of you on the radio, I'm holding this up to the microphone right now.
So you can see it. Take a look.
No,
look
you
at
know
the
what?
radio.
I think what I'm going to do now is I'm going to read it. Okay. Marginal tax rate per 10%. If you're single, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. That actually would be fun.
Just read the
it would be fun but the accountants, they'd eat that up. They're like, oh God, let me read that again.
Be like just down CPA radio. How can we help you?
They're pulling over.
That's right.
Adavasio's driving right now. He's like, I got to pull over and listen.
He's actually racing to the show to hear it live in the audience.
I want to watch him read it. Yeah,
that's great.
So, but one of the things is you pay your tax. Everybody has to pay a tax as long as you make a certain level of income. So you're going to make money, and then in order for the government and the world to run, you have to pay taxes, federal, both on the federal side and the state side. Now, what people always want to do is they say, and for most people in the world, working people, you have taxes that are withheld from your check, right? So if I make $50,000 a year and I have my federal taxes withheld, means that every time I get paid, a portion of my money that I get paid is going to be withheld and sent to the government to pay for my income tax.
Well, Uncle Sam, as patient as he is, doesn't want to wait until sometime in June to get his tax money, right?
That's right.
Uncle Sam likes cash flow just like everybody else.
Just every other business.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. So that's why they do it that way.
So what people like, how many of your clients have you heard, like, at the end, they're like, oh, I hate paying taxes. At the end, when they file their taxes out, oh my God, I'm going to owe taxes. I'm going to pay taxes. And then there's other people who are like, every year we get money back. It's like so awesome. It's like, so, and you look, and the two people, you think, oh, they're two different people. No, they're not.
Right.
If they make the same amount of money, guess what? You're paying the same amount of tax no matter what.
Yeah, all things being equal.
Yeah, all things being equal, right? Before we get to what you can deduct, you're paying. You owe the same amount of taxes prior to deductions. So if you make $100,000 and another person makes $100,000, and let's say you have more withheld on your from your W-2 from your paycheck, and they have less, and when everybody files their taxes, you get back $2,000, and they have to pay $2,000. Right. It doesn't matter. It's the same thing. Right. So now. I'll talk. My clients will be like, hey, they'll be like, oh, I just whatever I want to do, I want to pay. Make it so I don't have to pay. Make it so I'm like, okay, well, it's easy to do. All you got to do is you got to call your employer and say, withhold, take more money. Yeah,
that's right.
Pay more money during the year. And oh, by the way, what happens is, hey, now you're, when you look at your bank account and you say, well, my money came in. Wait, why did I only get like $1,000 or $2,000 this month as opposed to $2,500? Because you paid your taxes. And guess what? You may get a tax return. You may get and for some people, they like that. They find comfort in that, and that, I like that I get maybe a $2,000 or $3,000 return at the end of, when I file my taxes, and I use that for something. So they almost kind of treat it as
I don't want to dive in it too deep, but this is a perfect time to bring it up, which is this idea of some people say, look, to your point, some people say, look, I don't want to give the government an interest-free loan on my money, right?
That's right.
They perseverate on it, right? It drives their being, right?
Insanity.
It fuels their fire, right? And other people say it's forced savings.
It's a forced savings.
That's right. Nothing makes me happier than getting a $5,000 check back in the mail. What I do with it, who knows? Put it in the bank, go on vacation.
You feel good, right?
That's right. And my sense of that is every time it comes up, I always say to people, look, there's no right or there's no wrong, okay? Yes, is it an interest-free loan for the government? I don't know, maybe. But, rates are so low anyway, you're not a loan shark. What would you make on the money anyway? There's no
well, that's the question,
They're not paying the VIG, right? It's the government they get you money for a year. Big deal.
And a good question is if you're really kind of calculating that, and you say, look, inside of a year, if someone says to me, hey, look, I want to invest this money, but I want to get it, in 6 months, I'm like, all right, good luck. I mean, I don't know if you're going to, I can't tell you in 6 months if you're going to make money or lose money.
Let's put you in a great money market, which is going to earn you a nickel, and a big deal.
Yeah, right? I mean, like you said, interest rates are low, so I'm not going to get any guaranteed returns going to be worth anything. So this whole idea of, I don't want to loan the government money, I mean, yeah, you're giving them an interest-free loan, but at the same time, if you withheld that money, what would you do with it? Would you invest it somewhere?
Well, that's usually the answer. The answer is, I would completely and totally put that in like the world's greatest, best-performing mutual fund on the planet. No, you won't.
Yeah.
No, you won't.
And if you do, good for you. If you do,
great. You're a better man than I, because most people don't do that.
Yeah, if you do, then you're organized and you have a really good control of your money. And there's people that can do it.
Absolutely right.
Yeah, and if you're that kind of person, do it. Like, go for it, because you're absolutely right. Because now, in the purest sense of investing, you're making money.
You're ahead of the curve.
Yeah, you're doing better than and you understand it. And then, but also know the fact that when come tax time and you're going to get your tax bill of $2,000 or whatever the number is, you've like, okay, yeah, I've accounted for that because in my investments I've made $3,000. So here I am. Now I'm up $1,000.
Still ahead of grand. That's right.
Yeah,
that's
I'm up $1,000, and that's good. And some people can do that. Most people cannot.
Yeah, I'm a fan of the forced savings approach to say, you know what, have more taken out. Everybody hates to write a check. Everybody loves to get a check. Just get the check.
Well, that's the other piece, and that's one of the things that could happen kind of when you have like a significant tax change, or if you have a change in your own personal life where, like, say you make more money, or you have like a bonus, or there's some event that happens, or you no longer get to deduct. I don't get to deduct my line of credit interest anymore, or I pay off my loan, or what have you. And so now, like when let's say you've kind of been marginally like kind of I don't have a lot withheld, so I have more money, and then every year I'll pay like maybe $1,000 or two, whatever, like not a big huge tax bill, and then a year comes where you're like, or let's say maybe you started your own business or something happened, some big change, and then that year you get hit with a $15,000 tax bill, and that's a different animal. That's when people are like, what? And you see it a lot with these self-employed guys, right? They're like, oh yeah, I'm just going to, do my thing. I'm going to pay my quarterlies when I feel like it. And then at the end of the year, their accountant hands them and says, guess what? This is what you owe. This is what you owe in taxes. You owe $15,000. I'm like, well, wait a minute. Why? How can I do that?
Yeah.
My bank account only has $4,000 in it.
Right,
And you're like,
right.
look, that's the way it is.
That's math.
That's called tax math.
Yep.
So the way you get around that is you say, look, I'm gonna if you're paying quarterly taxes or if you're a W-2 employee, have more withheld. Have just so you don't get that surprise at the end.
If you're paying quarterlies, hire an accountant.
That's a good point.
You pay quarterlies, let them tell you what to do. Just get out of the way, just do whatever they want to do, because your situation is different, right? Your situation, I get friends of mine all the time, they ask about the tax thing. I go, you get a W-2 in the mail, you get a couple of 1099s. It's
easy. You don't own any property.
It's not even data entry anymore.
Yeah.
It's download my Fidelity account into my tax forms. That's fine. But once you start getting into, I got to pay quarterlies and I got other stuff. Do yourself a favor. Hire the accountant and make your life easy.
So one of the things we were talking about too is the idea of, okay, so I pay my tax, I make money, I pay taxes, and then when I go to file my taxes, I'm allowed to take, there's deductions that I'm allowed to take. And I can do I can go one of two ways. I can either do what the government gives you, which is known as the standard deduction, right? So the standard deduction versus the itemized deduction, where you then go through and you can identify all these, a whole laundry list of things that you potentially could lower your taxable income, which are known as tax deductions.
Well, and just in theory, so the idea behind the standard deduction is you don't have to track every single $50 check that you write to a charity or things like that. The government says, look, we assume ballpark, we'll throw you a bone for pick a number, right? $6,000, $6,500, whatever the number is. We'll just assume that's going to fit in with what you've given away or what you would take as a tax deduction. Rather than us have to check all your math, we'll just give you one. There you go. Take that one. And that, to your point, that's a standard deduction. Everybody goes, yeah, I'm somewhere south of that number. It's just easier.
So and then that makes your returns much easier. And if you go to an accountant will tell you. If you go sit down with an accountant and say, well, I'd like for you to do my taxes, they'll be like, all right, well, you're going to take the standard deduction, and it's going to be real easy for me to do your taxes, because you're just going to hand me 5 pieces of paper. I'm going to go doodle-doodle-doot. I'm going to put them into my computer, and then I'm going to generate your tax return, and I'm going to say, here, sign here, and we'll e-file it for you, and you're going to get a check in the mail, or you write this check when you send.
Now the itemized piece, that's the piece you see on TV, where somebody comes up with a shoebox full of receipts. Yeah. And then they go, well, here's all the things that I think I want to take off my taxes this year, and I think it's going to add up to more than whatever that silly standard deduction is.
So one of the big changes this year from 17 to 18 is the standard deduction is going up, and it's going up significantly. So in 2017, the standard deduction for a single taxpayer was $6,500. 2018 and moving forward will be $12,000. Married filing jointly, $13,000 versus $24,000. So that's significant. That could cause some people who, like you said, otherwise were kind of in that gray zone, itemized, and they try and they kill themselves trying to figure out different ways
to get over the threshold, right? Because I want to be able to get because if you're going to itemize, go big or go home, right? If you're going to itemize, you want to blow through that standard deduction number.
Yeah, because it's not worth it.
And most people's home interest deduction did that, right?
Yeah, that's right. So if you owned a house for your house and your property tax, you were able to deduct that no problem. I mean, you were able to kind of go past the standard deduction. Now, you could in 2018 moving forward, if you're married filing jointly, you could be below that, and then. That does a couple of things. One is it makes kind of your tax world a whole lot easier, right? And let's say you were paying an accountant to do your taxes, and you feel comfortable. That's fine. You can still do that, but there's not going to be the same amount of oh, I got to bring this. Oh, I have to track this. Oh, I have to find. It's here's my standard deduction. And for a lot of people, particularly older people, when I say older, I say people, 50 or older, real old. But a lot of people who are kind of unfortunately, I don't fall in the category where my house is almost paid off. But people who are maybe their homes are paid off, or maybe they don't have their kids are kind of out of the house or through, so they don't really have the deductions that they had before from their expenses. Sure. Maybe their kids are grown, so they're no longer dependents, so I don't have the dependent deduction. So now I'm you know what? The standard deduction is good. I mean,
yeah,
I used itemized before, and I might do better with the standard deduction than I did if I itemize. So that's and then again, you know, for a lot of people, taxation, the tax season is stressful. You know, and you know, you kind of alluded to, like, for people who did their taxes, you know, like on April 14th, you know, at midnight, or April 15th, you know, run into the post office. Or like your accountant says, hey, if you don't get me all your stuff by, you know, February 15th, you're going on extension.
Yeah.
Right. And oh, by the way, if you're going on extension, that's great. You don't have to file your taxes until May or June. But if you owe money, you owe that money by April 15th.
That's right. Yeah. Uncle Sam doesn't want to wait.
So the idea of being able to say, hey, okay, you know what, I can kind of get all this stuff, I can get my head around it, and I can gather all my things if I'm going to itemize or whatever I need to do to get ready for tax season. If I'm going to take the standard deduction, it could be a lot easier.
Well, and now it's harder to get there in a lot of respects, right? Now you really have to have a need to do it, and that increase in this standard deduction is going to push a lot of people just into standard deduction territory before, where, you know, it made more sense for them to itemize, and it was work. And so now, you know, they might save money. It might make it easier for them. They might, you know, that's sort of yet to be seen, right? A lot of the tax you know, assumptions are exactly that, right? So you don't really know where people are going to shake out. There was one other. Well, we're running out of time shortly, so this might be a 2-show topic in terms of.
Oh, I love 2 shows of taxes.
The property.
2 shows of hospice, 2 shows of taxes.
The property tax issue. And the deductibility of that.
All right, so can I? But there's going to be a cap on that. There's going to be a cap as to $10,000 is how much I can deduct from my property tax.
Right.
So,
and before there was no cap, you take the whole thing, right?
So for those of you who live in these big property tax towns where, and I don't know, I can only speak for my town, which is Holliston. So if I ever get the ear of some government official, you know, in town of Holliston, I want to tell him this or her this. I'm going to say, listen, why am I paying so much in taxes? Why do I feel like why is my house getting taxed at this when I feel like it only taxes? And then I'm going to say, why is my trash guy and a laundry list of other complaints. If I only knew somebody, who do I talk to?
Who could be the voice of government for you?
Who do I talk to?
You know what? Let me make a couple of calls. See what I can come up with.
Well, how could you help me? Why? What do you know Kevin Conley?
Hurtful. The hits just keep on coming.
Yes, the hits just keep on coming. No, I'm happy. I'm very happy with my town government in Holliston. Kevin Conley and his associate, whoever the other guy.
That's 2 of us, actually. Okay, that's all right.
2 other guys.
Yeah.
All right, so this is it. We got to wrap it up.
All right, more taxes next week. So remember, go out this week. Make a different coffee purchase so that next week you are ready to go, primed and ready to go.
No, you're ready.
Going to go with the dark roast. Make sure you stay awake, and we'll wrap it up. Actually, you know, it is a significant change, and I think I still stand by the idea that a lot of people don't know whether or not it's going to be a benefit or it's going to hurt them in some way.
Yeah, and it all depends on the individual. Yep.
Yeah. But a lot of the changes tend to be, hopefully, negligible. You know, a little bit of a waiver either way. You hope it doesn't cost you a ton of dough. But we'll talk about the potential impacts of that on our next show.
All right, we'll see you next week. Thank you for joining us on Money in the Law. On behalf of Jay Marsden, John Drohan, and Christian from the Holliston Cable Access TV, and all of the greater Milford area who listens to My FM 101.3, thanks for listening to Money in the Law. We'll see you next Saturday at 9.
Have a great week.